This podcast is a part of the More Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Daily Leader Podcast by Pattern Talent, where we interview great leaders and we seek to understand leadership. I'm Brad McDonald.
And I'm Taylor Jessup, and we really hope that you enjoy this episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Daily Leader. I am Taylor Jessup here along with my co-host, Brad McDonald, and we are super excited for another day and another fantastic guest. As always, before we get into that, just a few shout outs that we'd like to give out. Jesus with Video Pilot does a fantastic job if you are looking into podcast recording and editing. April Norris has the fantastic music that you just heard, and she does all of her own stuff, and she is so wonderful. And our sponsor, Ellery May, Candle Co., lighting tiny fires in your house that smell like heaven, which her shop is currently not running. This is my wife as we are about ready to have some twins, but go check that out, of course, and let her know that I said it's a tiny fire in your house that smells like heaven, because she hates that line, but I really enjoy it. So, man, Brad, we've had some fantastic guests on, but I think today we got somebody really, really special, especially for you and in your life. And I'd love it if you just want to dive in and talk to us about our guest today.
That's right. Yeah, today's really a special day, and I'm super excited for the opportunity to interview our guest, Cory Carlson. Before I say anything about Cory, I just want to say he is a good man. And I've had the privilege of knowing Cory now for about 4 years, maybe 5 years. And just over the last year or so, he's become my executive coach. And being my executive coach, I've just gotten an incredible window into his life, into his story, and into his skill sets. And just really watching him as he coaches me, and in a team of coaches, including myself, that really work and serve under him, helping him as he grows his coaching and consulting business. And so Cory is a good man, and that's the first thing. He trained as a civil engineer at the University of Missouri, Columbia, and then he completed an MBA at Rockhurst University. And he worked as a civil engineer, and then he kind of transitioned into sales roles for engineering and construction companies. And he climbed the ranks to VP, and then eventually to president of sales for a large construction company. And then he parted ways with corporate America, which is a part of his story. Cory, I hope that you'll share that a little bit with our listeners. He's a husband and a father. He's an executive coach. He does one-on-one coaching, primarily with men who are looking to level up both at home and in their work. And he also has a mastermind called the Intentional Leader Alliance, which he'll share about at some point. He does keynote speaking. He's an incredible speaker, both highly motivational and highly practical. And he's the author of 2 books, which we're going to get to talk about in depth today, and we'll link to in the show notes, both his first one, Win at Home First, and his latest book, Rise and Go, which has really been having a big impact on me in this season of my life. He is a podcaster, and you can check his podcast out. Just search Win at Home First. It's in the top 1.5% of podcasts globally. So he's just absolutely crushing it on that platform, interviewing really incredible guests, some of whom we hope to have on this podcast. And Cory, that's kind of the resume and the intro. Man, fill in the gaps there. Tell us your story, and just catch our listeners up on who you are and what you're all about.
Well, thank you, Brad and Taylor, for the intro and for having me on. And really, I'm grateful to be in orbit with you and really, doing life together, because you guys push me. You make me better, even as we were talking about before we hit record. Your prep for just today's interview is top notch. So thank you for that. You have helped me just get better, as we've talked about, even some mindset shifts that I'm sure we'll even discuss on this podcast. So thank you both. Yeah, I think for the listeners, I think the one thing I'd say before we dive into this is, kind of no matter where you're at, you don't have to stay there. Mm-hmm. And so as we talk, if you feel your marriage is stale, you can improve it. If you feel you've been an absent father or mother, you can totally change that. If you're feeling burned out or lacking purpose at work, you can change that. And unfortunately, I know all those to be true because it happened in my own life, where I had to recalibrate both in my marriage and my parenting, at work, and make changes. So as we talk on this podcast, you're going to hear a lot through this conversation, but just grab one thing and try it. And if that works, add another. But just don't be overwhelmed. I think as all of us, there's so much information out there, books, podcasts. But we lack implementation. So just encourage the listeners just to grab that one thing and implement. When it happens, add another one, and then another one. So I mean, that would be the first thing I'd say for the listeners, because I know sometimes these can be overwhelming, even for myself as I listen to podcasts and read books. Yeah, I think for my story, you covered so much of it. I had a mentor say that wisdom is spelled WISDUMB. And for me, that is a little bit of my story. I think any wisdom I share today is because I've made some dumb mistakes, and I just tried to kind of, recalibrate and straighten the path as I go.
That's so good. That's so good. That is going to stick with me for a long time because I'm in the same boat of making plenty of dumb mistakes in my life. So, and I love that. I love the idea of going, hey, oftentimes we can read a book, we can, listen to a bunch of podcasts, we can do all these different things, right? And my tendency is to try and implement a ton of things and change a bunch of stuff, and then I end up changing nothing because I get burnt out really quickly trying too many things and feel like a failure, rather than going, hey, all right, cool, what's the one thing that really sticks out today? What's the one thing, and can I go do that? And then stack some habits, the James Clear, habit stacking. Hey, can I get one? And then I can build upon that. So that's a great word right in your intro right there. So already got something for our listeners right out of the gate, man. So tell me a little bit more about Win at Home First. So what inspired you? Yes, Brad, there we go. For our listeners that are not able to see, Brad is holding up this fantastic book. What inspired you to write the book?
Yeah, what inspired me to write the book, Win at Home First, is because, to be honest, I lost at home first. And I put work in front of my family. I put my image in front of my identity. And I just got, messed up my priorities. And so for me, myself, that's part of my story, is really losing at home. And that became the reason to write the book. The reason for the title, Win at Home First, is I just found myself saying that a lot to clients. This is before I was writing a book. I there's one story in particular that a president of a bank hired me to help with culture, to help with vision and values of the organization, develop leaders inside the company. And as we are having really one of our first calls, I was talking with him, and I started asking questions about his personal life, because during the discovery session, he had kind of said, I say kind of bragged about being married for 25 plus years. I thought that was pretty darn cool. So when I asked him about his weekend, when we were in this coaching call, his energy changed. He went from being very excited to talk about work and how they just crossed over a new, high employee mark of, I think it was like 250 employees, high energy. But then when we started talking about home, it changed, and I could just feel something different. So I asked about the weekend. He said he was busy with his kids, and I was like, well, in my mind, I was like, well, where's the wife in all this? And so I asked, and energy goes further down, and I could just feel, I just kind of had this, prompting to go a little deeper. And I was nervous to go deeper because at the time, that was my largest contract ever with the client. So I for sure didn't want to get fired, but I was like, I got to go forward with this. So I just said, hey, you hired me to help for vision and values. We're going to do that. But in order for you to be sustainable at work, we have got to win at home first. And we are going to need to press into your marriage and your kids. Is that okay? And it got quiet. I was like, oh boy. Well, I just lost my big client. I just got fired. How awkward and weird. And he goes, yeah, it's okay. Every day I drive home, I get a pit in my stomach before I go through that front door. He goes, yeah, it's okay. We can talk about home. I was like, well, okay, here we go. And so we did. And over the course of our coaching engagement, we did, in fact, put together the vision and values of the organization. We did work on developing other leaders through some of the content that we share through our executive coaching content. But we also talked about home, and him and his wife started dating again. And he had more one-on-ones with his kids, and we just started to see a change that has continued to last. I'm still in contact with this individual. It's still, up and to the right at home and at work. And so that just came after my experience of losing at home and then getting my act together, and then call it winning at home now, and then helping clients do it. That's why I wrote the book, is to really hand over my story for a greater story. And that is to help business leaders win at home and win at work. It is not an either or, it's a both and. You can have success in the boardroom and in the family room. And I want leaders to know that and to work towards it.
Yeah, man, that is so powerful. That's just really great. I love the way that works out. And it is fascinating how when we start to put in work on our personal lives, our professional lives can be the beneficiary of that. Like when we are putting in the work at home, our business life can be even more successful, right? Rather than that pit in your stomach when you go home, you'll be like, man, I can't wait to get home to my family. So help our listeners and myself understand a little bit more about so why do our personal lives get out of order in the first place? As somebody who's, totally guilty of that, has gone through that, has wrecked relationships because of that, help me understand, why is that?
Yeah, our personal life doesn't have a lot of rewards that are tangible. Kind of immediate. At work, there's those rewards. Hey, we hit our monthly goal in sales. We got the raise. We got the promotion. We got the corner office. Kind of like whatever it is, there's like these rewards that happen in the professional world, but at home they don't happen as much. You can have an amazing parenting day, but no one's really high-fiving you and say, thanks, Dad, thanks, Mom, for showing up. You were awesome. And the same thing in marriage. In matter of fact, at home, there's rolled eyes. There's, people talk back. There's all kinds of different things. And so it's easier to check out and not think that it really matters. And with a lot of leaders I talk to, because I had to learn this my own self, our day does not end when we walk through the front door of our house. Our day ends when our head hits the pillow. And so we need to know that as leaders. Just like if you're going to drive across country, you have to stop at different times to fill up the gas tank. Do the same thing for your day. Right. Do what you need to do to give you that energy to make it to 9 p.m., 10 p.m., whatever time you go to bed. Whatever that is. Go for a walk, take a break, do some push-ups, do whatever gets the juices flowing again. But I think that's the biggest difference of home and work, is that at work we're rewarded, and at home we're just not as much. But to be honest, the reward is in really the longevity and the loyalty that a family can bring when you show up every single day. I think about my own life. I've had 18 leaders or 18 bosses. One family. Some of those bosses I've had, I don't even know if some of them are alive. And if they are, I don't know where they live.
Yeah.
But I have one family.
Yeah. Man. That
Cory,
is super good. I love
yeah,
that.
I actually put this into practice yesterday, and ringing through my head was your voice asking me a question, Brad, when is the day done? And then the answer, when my head hits the pillow. So it's 4 p.m. yesterday. I'm doing a client call on the go, driving. It's a great call. Client of mine having a job transition, horrible week, one of the worst weeks of his career. And honestly, the call I was exhausted. I was exhausted. The call was exhausting. I was really trying to show up for this client as an encouragement and a motivator and an inspiration to him as he makes this really big job transition. And I'm thinking about, okay, I can't go home. I can't arrive home on the end of this call. So I swing by a coffee shop about 15 minutes from my house. I buy an afternoon cup of coffee, which I know is a big no-no, but I'm trying to make it happen, right? So buy that cup of coffee, finish my call, and then on the way home, I'm jacked. I talk to a friend, and I show up, and I'm able to help with dinner, put the WWF beat down on my son, wrestled him for 10 minutes, got all that energy out. We ate dinner, and it was a great night. And it's because, Cory, you taught me that phrase. You introduced me to a question. And this is an incredible segue into a quote I want to read from the last paragraph of the introduction of Win at Home First, which I think is such a marker of who you are as a coach and as a man. It's from Steve Maraboli, and it says this: an inch of action will get you closer to your goals than a mile of intention. And you say, hey, look, intention is not enough. We have to take action if we're going to succeed at home and at work. And so how do you help leaders take an inch of action the way that you helped me do it yesterday, with that question in my mind?
Yeah, that's cool. What a cool story. And way to take action on it, right? Way to buy the coffee, way to make a change. That's pretty darn cool to do. I mean, with me, I think probably my clients get annoyed with me probably saying all the time, what are you going to do about it? What's the next step? Because intentionality doesn't do anything for us. I mean, that phrase, it's the thought that counts. Really? Really? I'm just going to, the thought that counts, babe. I'm going to buy you flowers for the rest of our lives. That's the thought. I'm not ever going to do it. I'm just, it's the thought that counts. No, it's not. It takes actual action. So I think wherever you need to show up more, whether it is getting to the gym, doing scripture or journaling, or being intentional with a friend or a kid, wherever the deficit is in your life, that's okay. We all got deficits, but wherever it is in this moment, what is the one action you can take in this next week to make progress in that area? Whatever it is. Maybe it's going on a date with your wife or husband. Maybe it's sending a text of encouragement to a friend. Maybe it's getting to the gym, getting up 15 minutes early to meditate, prayer, journal, whatever it is that you do. And I think that's just it, is put some action to your ideas just to get movement and get momentum.
So kind of continuing to move through Win at Home First, there's two big things that you hit right at the front of the book that I think you're really, really good at coaching people through, and that are absolutely critical for leaders. It's identity and vision. Identity and vision. And we'll get back to this when we talk about Rise and Go here at the end of the book, because that's such an important part of the Rise and Go manifesto. But why are identity and vision so critical for leaders today?
Identity is critical, well, one, for leaders, but I've just seen in my own life is, if I don't know what my identity is and what it is rooted in, then I will be victim to really what culture wants me to be. I'll be tossed around by the waves of culture. And that may be how much money I make, what's the car I drive, how do I look, whatever the case may be. And then it just becomes what the world is telling me is important, which is fleeting, especially as we call it a cancel culture. I mean, I could get canceled for any of these different things that I'm going after. And they're all temporary. I've had the corner office. I've had a fancy title president of sales, which I ended up getting terminated from, which is another part of my story. All those are temporary, and they unfortunately can go away. And so if your identity is rooted in something temporary, what does it do to you when it goes away? Well, it's a midlife crisis. It could be a downward spiral of drinking or buying a red sports car or whatever the thing may be. We need to have our identity in something that is permanent. For me, and I know for you guys, but for me, my identity is I'm a beloved son of God. That doesn't change. It doesn't change if I have an amazing month of revenue or a bad month of revenue. It doesn't change if I get in an argument with my wife or not, or with my kids or not. That is consistent. So because of my identity being a beloved son of God, I now work from a place of approval as opposed to always looking for approval from others. Because the way I'm wired, I want approval for others. I want them to think I'm the best coach ever, or the best speaker, or the best podcaster ever. But that's not going to always happen. Well, maybe never happen. Let's just go with it'll never happen. However, I can show up as a coach. I can show up as a podcaster. I can show up because I'm working from a place of approval. That I can do these things with confidence because of the story and the journey I've been, and this idea that, hey, God will equip the called to do the things. I may not be the best, but at least I can show up. And so that's why identity is so important for all of us, so that we can operate from a place of approval as opposed to looking for it.
Well, let's talk about vision. Share a little bit of your own personal vision, the thing that you're kind of going after.
A big part for me on that vision, went home first. For the listeners who want to get the book, buy the book. I put together this framework that we use in our coaching to put together a vision statement. We use 5 Ps to help with what that vision statement is. And the reason I put that in the book is it was a game changer in my life. When I was president of sales for this company, I remember vividly being at this fancy dinner in Florida, and the private equity guy was showing me his phone of how loud his brand new Mercedes engine was when it was like peeling out of the driveway and down the street. And I remember just watching this and thinking, is this really my life? Like, just to help guys make money and go buy awesome, amazing cars? Like, is that really my life? And there's nothing wrong with awesome cars. I know some incredible guys that are super rich and have many awesome cars. And they're just good guys. But the way this conversation hit me was impactful because he's more excited about the sound of his engine than he was about his family and anything else. So I remember leaving that dinner as I'm waiting for my ride to pick me up. I actually called my coach. And I just said, I can't believe this is my life. Like, what is happening? Is this what I was put on earth to do? And my coach just basically just said, hey, you need a vision statement so it can help you through the rough days, the mundane days, the challenging days. And I said, what's a sentence going to do for me? And so I trusted him, as I trusted him with many other conversations in my life. I put together a vision statement. My vision statement is to connect people to greater performance and even more significant purpose. When I put that together, that's probably about 7-8 years ago when I put that vision statement together. It's the same one I have today, and that changes how I show up anywhere and everywhere. Whether I'm on a coaching call, whether I'm with my kids, whether I'm at a fire pit with guys. How can I connect people to greater performance? So as I'm talking to them, I'm thinking, hey, how can I help and encourage them to win at home and win at work? And then greater purpose, if I can connect people to a relationship with God, I will. But if I can't because they're atheists or it's just a weird place to talk about spirituality, just a greater purpose of serving others. That's a win. So for me, that's what my vision statement is and how I'm trying to go through my day-to-day.
Yeah, that's super good. That's super, like, that gives you your compass and your true north of like, this is what I'm coming back to and what I'm doing. As you were talking, I just, Anytime I can drop sports references, I do, because Brad has no idea, and I just like when Brad has no idea about something. But a couple years ago, Cooper Kupp, who plays for the Rams, I almost said St. Louis
Wide
Rams, but they're
receiver.
not. Yeah,
I didn't
he
know
said a
Brad
great.
didn't know sports. I'm going to have to remember that.
Yeah, please do remember on in any of your
Well,
calls, you should bring that
yeah,
up.
the whole internet knows now. So thank you, Taylor.
Yeah, you're welcome. This is the clip that I'd like to go viral right here, so everybody knows that Brad doesn't know sports. But he said a really cool line. They asked him, he had a fantastic season, right? Killed it in the Super Bowl, and they asked kind of like, "Hey, what happened?" And he said, he goes, "Hey, I stopped playing for victory and started playing from victory." In other words, his identity, and Cooper Kupp happens to be a believer, started playing from a place where he was grounded, right? And he happens to be a believer as well, and going, "That's the place. That's the place that I started playing from." And then his performance was fantastic. They watched his career totally, but he wasn't going to be shaken, because he had his values. He knew who he was, and whether they won or whether they lost, he could say, "Hey, like, this is truly who I am." So I love that. And I love your vision statement, because times do get hard, right? You're not going to have easy days. You are going to have a lot of stuff. And if any of our listeners are like me, I'm typically my own worst enemy. I heard once, and a guy that's been in recovery for a while, somebody said once, if I'm in my head, if I'm in my head, I'm behind enemy lines. In other words, there can be so much junk going on up here, right? That I'm behind enemy lines when I'm caught in there. So can you tell me a little bit more specifically, like, what is, as you talk about, head trash, and like, how does it get in there?
Yeah, head trash can get in there a variety of ways. I mean, head trash could be something that it was said to you maybe years ago. I mean, a head trash that I could have looped, kind of circling in my brain is, I remember a high school counselor saying that when I mentioned I was going to be a civil engineer, a counselor, I think, had great intentions. I think she was trying to probably prevent me from, it being a train wreck. But she said, "You're not smart enough to be a civil engineer." I mean, and I'm just going to assume that her heart was very good.
Sure.
But some days that became head trash of, "I'm not smart enough to be an engineer."
Yeah.
There were a few days it was a motivator. I'm going to prove her wrong. And I'm not a fan of the old chip on your shoulder, let's go prove everybody wrong. I don't think that's sustainable. But there were days I just didn't think I was smart enough to be that civil engineer. So head trash could be from somebody else. Head trash could be from your own self, of just replaying a loss. Whatever setback you had, just keep replaying it. And I've got different ones in my life that, if I'm not careful, they'll start to replay, whether I'm replaying them or the devil's bringing them back into my mind. There was a time right before 2008, my wife and I bought a bunch of real estate. My advice to all listeners: don't buy a bunch of real estate before a recession. It doesn't work out. And, it was a bad deal, downward spiral. We almost had to file bankruptcy. For any listener who had to file bankruptcy, there's nothing wrong with that. But luckily we did not have to. But that was head trash I would keep hearing for years, is, "I will never be successful financially. I will never be able to run a business because of this mistake." Mistakes I've made in other areas of my life, that head trash of, "I will never be able to be a good husband because I did this, a good dad because I did this." And that head trash, we have got to, as Paul talks about in the New Testament, hold every thought captive. And any thought you've got circling your brain, your mind, it's head trash. Hold it captive, bring awareness to it, and then look to conquer it. And there's different ways to do that, but that's what head trash is. And I think it's a self-limiting belief that we all have, and we have to destroy it.
Yeah, no, that's super good, right? And if you want to, I think the old recovery additive is, if you want to stop something, start something, right? So if you want to stop having those thoughts, then start catching them and continue to replace them with what is actually true about you. What is your vision, if you have that, and the belief that I can do that, right? The belief that it's all lining up, and really visualizing, hey, this is where I want to go. Are there any other things that we should do to get rid of head trash?
Yeah, I mean, Brad mentioned the Rise and Go Manifesto, which in my second book called Rise and Go, at the back of the book, I put together an 8-part framework called the Rise and Go Manifesto. I did not invent a manifesto. They've been around for forever. However, I started using a manifesto in 2020. I never used one before, but I had to start compiling some information for my own life to get back up. The whole reason I wrote Rise and Go was I got knocked down. All leaders get knocked down. It's just the great leaders get back up quicker. And so what could it look like in your life if the next time you're knocked down, you're able to get up quicker? And that's what I believe Rise and Go could be a resource for all the listeners to check out because it helped me. So I left corporate and started coaching and kind of got another job to kind of help. And so it kind of became this 50-50 thing. And then eventually 75% I was coaching, 25% helping this other company, to eventually 90-10, to eventually 100% coaching on March 1st, 2020. Wrong time to jump in. So I mentioned buying real estate before recession. I mentioned going into coaching before COVID. I mean, if you want to know when to do stuff, talk to me. I'll let you know. No. And so anyways, my family and I, we made the decision March 1st, 2020, go all into coaching. So we did. March 13th, 2020 is when the United States started to shut down. Stay-at-home mandates, wear the mask, work from home, all the things. And so on that day, I got some emails canceling speaking engagements and workshops. On that day, 35% of my revenue went away. I know there's listeners who are affected much worse through COVID. You had deaths in the family. You may have lost 100% of your revenue. I get it. And sorry, that happened. For us and our family, 35% was a big deal and a scary deal because young kids, what's going to happen? What about college? What about this? What about the other 65%? I may lose all of that. So it sent me kind of a downward spiral, and I was scared. I was frustrated. I mean, I was mad at God. I was like, hey, I thought we did this together. 50-50, 75-25. What about you? You dropped your end of the deal. And that's the thoughts I was having. So I actually went on this cool journey over the coming months and years of just putting together content that helped me get back up. And that was the Rise and Go Manifesto. So Taylor, to your question, like, what can we do? Those are the 8-part frameworks I just put together. It's I am statements. So if I hear that I'll head trash, what are some I am statements? I put some vision board stuff in there to remind myself of what am I going after. And that Rise and Go Manifesto, it's I don't even know. I think like a 16-page Google Doc. I don't look at it every day, nor do I look at every part, for sure. However, it's a tool that I can proactively look at a few times a week, but maybe even more importantly, I can reactively look at it whenever I need to.
Yeah.
And
you can always go to it.
When I lose a client, when I lose a speaking engagement, to this day, if I'm frustrated and mad and think the world's closing in, I can go to that document and get back on my feet.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that it is practical and that just happens to everyone. We're all going to get knocked off our feet, right? Like that actually brought me back to, you remember the old Chumbawamba song? I get knocked down, but I get up again.
Yeah.
You're never going to keep me down. Yeah. That's kind of like the image that I got of like, okay, cool. I'm going to keep repeating this manifest. I'm going to go back to it when I get knocked down. I'm going to do it. But in your life, you've had some times, and I so appreciate you being authentic and just sharing with us. You've had some times when you just gotten knocked down and had to get back up. So tell me a little bit more about why courage is so important for leaders.
Yeah, I mean, courage is, well, one, just to get back up. I mean, that in itself. And when we're knocked down, we kind of think we're the only ones getting knocked down. We hop on the internet, you go to LinkedIn, and everyone's doing great. And this person has this amazing testimony, and this person just landed this client, and this person just had their best month ever. And you're just knocked down. And so the courage piece is just to, hey, just to take a step, just to get back up, make that one phone call, send that one text, just get back in the game.
Yeah.
Because the devil wants to keep you down. because that's a victory for him. And so just have the courage just to take one action. It doesn't have to be crazy. It could just be one thing to get moving.
Yeah.
And so by having the courage to take one action, you then will have courage to take another and then another. And that's just the power in it.
Yeah, it can kind of multiply. And I think we often get, we get scared. You have the events kind of like you've had, or something doesn't work out, right? I was it was John Wayne who said, courage isn't being afraid, which is what I used to think it was all the time, of like, man, there's just these brave people out there that just don't get afraid. But he rephrased it and said, hey, courage is actually being scared to death and saddling up anyways. So being like scared to death, but just take that next step. I think that for our listeners, like, man, I need to hear that, of when my head trash is going, when I've when I'm getting my butt kicked at work, when whatever, just have the courage to take the next step to do the next right thing. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, the reality is none of us know what we're doing. I mean, it's just kind of a step at a time.
I love that. Let's keep leaning into Rise and Go together. When I look through part 2 and part 3, I see all of these leadership traits. And so there's a few that I would love to highlight with you, Cory, because I think they're powerful, and they're things that you've taught me a lot that I'd love for our listeners to get exposure to. But one of the things that you do a remarkable job at, not only personally, but also as a coach and a speaker and the facilitator of your mastermind, is help people get clear on their desires. So this first leadership trait that you focus on in Build the Courage to Get Back Up, part 2 of Rise and Go, is this question: what do you want? Why is it so critical and powerful for leaders to be able to answer the question, what do you want?
Yeah, I think, first and foremost, I think a lot of people never even answer it because they think it's selfish. We've been told to not go after what we want. What about others? You need to be a servant leader, help everybody else. And yes, there is a part of that that's all true. But when I was kind of in this low spot when I was writing Rise and Go, I was just pointing to different scripture. And the first words in the book of John that John captures Jesus saying is, what are you seeking? Like, what is it you want? I mean, there's even times where Jesus asks a blind man, what do you want healed? To all of us, we're like, that's dumb. Of course he wants his eyesight back. But maybe not. Maybe he wants his marriage restored. Maybe his back is killing him. And he would rather have that fixed because he's never had eyesight. So he didn't even know what he's missing. And I think that's what the same is true in all of our lives, is what do we want? By knowing what we want, then in fact, we'll have clarity of going after it. Is it we want peace? Do we want our marriage improved? Are we wanting, better kind of unity in our family? Like, what's the thing you're going after? And by having that, right, what you focus on expands. And so by knowing kind of what I want to go after, or any of the leader listening, by knowing what you want to go after, you start making choices that align with the direction you're wanting to go. Because, if everything's important, then nothing's important. And so identifying what you want for your family, for your marriage, for your work team, for whatever it is, it helps basically align your actions, your choices towards that North Star.
Yeah. That's so good. And I think that is good clarification, that we do get to kind of go through and figuring out what we want doesn't necessarily mean that we're being selfish. I think that sometimes there's the connotation there that, hey, if I have something that I want a new truck, or I want whatever, that can be selfish. I love Townsend and Cloud. I can't remember if it's in the Boundaries book or if it was just in some curriculum that I watched of theirs. They talked about there's a difference between being selfish and self-centered. And selfish, they kind of said, hey, I do get to make some choices for me, right? Which way do I want to go? Self-centered is everything revolves around me. And there is a difference between those. So I think it is good, because if we can figure out and get clear on what we want and keep going towards that, and realize that that's not shameful, that is okay, then we can have a clear direction on where we're going, which I think is super powerful. In that, as we are kind of going along that journey and trying to pursue our vision, go after the things that we, are that we value. Along the way, I think that there's some good tools to help us stay on that path. And some of those talk about are like gratitude and positivity, which I love because I forced Brad years ago. I didn't force him, but I started a gratitude journal myself. And Brad would just text me or call me all the time. And he'd say, "Hey, I made an entry in my gratitude journal today." I say, "Hey, what did you say?" He said he would actually write this prayer. He said, "Lord, I am so thankful that I am not Taylor." That was it. That was all he wrote every day. But it did have a significant impact on me, not Brad, but doing a gratitude journal. It's called the 5-Minute Journal for anybody out there. We're not sponsored by them, but go check it out. So why are gratitude and Oh, there it is. Come on, shut up. For you online, Corey just literally grabbed the 5-Minute Journal out. Let's
Right here,
go, man. I can go get my copy.
Okay, now that I know Cory has one, I'm going to do it, Taylor.
Yeah, thank you.
You telling me to do it wasn't enough. Cory telling me to do it, totally I will.
That's fine. So that's 4 years. So 12 times 4 is 48 months versus 10 seconds of Cory pulling out a book. Just want to know how the math works out.
You can't be a prop in your own land.
That's right. Thank you. Yeah. Nobody wants me here. But, as soon as you talk to somebody that is not from here, good to go. So why is that? Like, why is gratitude and positivity, why are they so important for leadership practices?
Kind of what we said a minute ago. I'll just say it again because of it's important. What you focus on expands. And so for me, the reason I started doing the gratitude journal is because, there's a story that goes with it. September 2020, I took my daughter to South Carolina. We had a coaches meeting. And I was like, hey, a benefit of 2020 was virtual schooling. And so you could take your kids out of school because they could do it anywhere. Yeah. So I want to take my daughter with me to South Carolina. We could hang out, maybe check out some colleges on the way, which we did. She could participate in some of the coaching activities, just win-win. So the first night of this coaching conference, her and I are paired up to go over some different questions. What are celebrations in your life and breakthroughs? What are challenges? What are frustrations? As we're writing down our answers individually, we then kind of report back to each other. And so my daughter goes first, and she's telling me all these great cool things about dance and school and friends, and it was awesome. It was great. Well, now it's my turn to give my answers to these different questions. And as I give all my answers and kind of say what I put in each little quadrant, I was like, hey, Kylie, what do you think? And Kylie goes, Dad, you're the smartest guy I've ever met. No, just kidding. She didn't say that at all. She said, Dad, you sound angry. I was like, what? What do you mean I sound angry? And as we unpacked all my answers were, I've written book number 1, but I want to write books 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've had some cool clients, but I want more, more, more. I've had some cool speaking engagements, but I want more, more, more. A 15, 16-year-old girl, my daughter, could tell I was more focused on the unchecked boxes than I was the check boxes of my life. More focused on the gap than the gain. And I was like, if she can see this, well, what can everyone else see? But if she can see this, that is so unhealthy of me, my mindset, and how I'm viewing life. So I came home from that trip, September 2020, and every night since then, I write down, I've missed a few nights. I write down 3 things I'm grateful for. I got a book by my nightstand. That's where I do it. Because of the significance it had in my life on that one, I tell all clients to do it. I start my calls with wins. But I also now have added another piece to it. Like back to me showing you that 5-minute journal. I now do it in the morning also. So I end the day thinking of the wins from the day. I start the morning thinking of 3 things I'm grateful for. And it just helps. Do I still think of some of the crap in my life and the bad stuff? Yes, I still think of it. But I'm trying to orient my mindset to be focused on all the good that is happening.
Man, that is amazing. I love that, figuring out the gap between I'm focusing more on what I'm going after than what I have. And I think that so many of us tend to be unhappy for that reason, is because we're focusing more on where we want to be. Not that that's a bad thing, but we focus more on that than what we've actually been given. And we don't have time to get into it, but there are so many positive impacts on health just in gratitude. So I encourage you, go Google search that. If you're listening, if you're curious, like Google search, physical and mental benefits of gratitude and doing a gratitude journal. So
Cory, one powerful phrase that appears in your books, and you've said it to me more times than I can count, man, kind of help us land the plane of this conversation by sharing the idea that God has the night shift and what that means to you and what it's meant to your clients.
Yeah, God has a night shift is based on my interpretation or what I was hearing as I was reading Psalm 127. And Psalm 127 is, unless the Lord builds the house, those that wake up early labor in vain. And as I was just reading that, I kind of heard this phrase, hey, man, I got the night shift. And I know God's got every shift. He's working all the time. I get it. But for me, the language and why that phrase was given to me during this quiet time is it made me understand that if I work hard and bust my tail from 8 to 5 to grow the business, I can stop at the end of the day and then be present with my family and go to the gym or go to basketball practice for my son or go to whatever I need to do because God's got the night shift. Meaning that there are maybe people thinking about hiring me, or they're having discussions of, hey, who's our next speaker going to be? Maybe it should be Cory. Like there's different things that are at play because God's got the night shift. And so that helped me start to have boundaries in my life, because especially leaving corporate and launching a coaching and speaking business, you can work 24/7. There's always a new contact on LinkedIn you got to go find. There's always a post you got to make. There's always another thing to do. And I could not figure out how to turn it off. But reading this scripture, hearing that phrase, I started to have peace with, yes, I can turn it off. If I work hard during the day, I can rest and be present with my family at night because God's got the night shift. So hopefully that's beneficial to the listeners of some sort of, no matter what you do, you can unplug because God's got that night shift in your life.
love that. Man, that's so good. Okay, so we're wrapping up. We're wrapping up in a different way that we're trying something new. So our last guest actually had a question for you, and then we'll see if you've got a question for our next guest. So her question was, do you have a side hustle that you are enjoying right now?
Do I have a side hustle, man?
Yeah. Is there any side hustle? Like, are you could be a side hustle. Like, hey, and by the way, on the side, I'm a part of the cartel. I don't tell a lot of people that. Or do you have anything you're doing on the side, on top of what you're doing coaching wise?
No, I mean, I right now, I mean, I think no, the answer is no. And here's why, is because the side hustle for me was to get into coaching. I don't need to look to do something different right now because I am loving this. I just love it. I can't believe that I get to come alongside leaders and help them. And so this is what I like to do. Inside of this umbrella, I got some side things. I'm thinking about doing book number 3. I'm thinking about doing some other stuff inside here. But right now, this is a life to the full. I love that I get to do this. And so technically I have nothing on the side.
That's such a good answer. That's such a good, your side hustle turned into what you love, man. So
Cory, tell the listeners real quick before we take off here about the ILA, the Intentional Leader Alliance, because I see that as kind of being this budding new venture that you've just been doing over the last year or two. And I would just love for people to get more exposure to that opportunity because I think it's powerfully transformational.
Yeah, thanks. I guess that would be like a side hustle inside the umbrella for sure when I launched it. Right. No, it was just, I love one-on-one coaching. You see a lot of transformation. It's more hands-on, roll up the sleeves, kind of white glove service. But I just, there's power in community. And what I want to do is bring in the coaching with community, put together this Intentional Leader Alliance where we help activate men to win at home, win at work, and in their faith. And it's been awesome. Got multiple cohorts that are taking place, and we are seeing change in men who are starting to date their spouse. It's late February, and one guy's already lost 18 pounds. Not that it's a weight loss deal, but it's amazing. Hey, it's what do you want? He wanted to lose weight. He's lost 18 pounds. Other guys are being more intentional with their one-on-one meetings with their direct reports and talking about personal and professional goals and not just professional, and seeing change there. So we're just seeing cool things that are happening. And I could go on and on with examples, but that is what's fun. So if there's a listener looking for content, community, and coaching for this season, then reach out to any of us and we'll point you in the right direction.
Yeah. Love it, man. Well, we will put all the different ways to find you in our show notes. Any specific spots, if our listeners are like, hey, I want to go hear more from Cory, where should I go?
Yeah, thanks. And thanks to you two for having me on here today. Thanks for what you're doing to help leaders. Hey, the Daily Leader, and that's pretty darn cool. So thank you to you both. I think the question for that next listener, I was supposed to tell you that, and we skipped over it.
Go back to it.
What's one thing you can do to improve your marriage?
Ooh, love it. That. Let's go deep. Yeah.
Yeah, let's go deep, man. We don't got time to waste around surface talk for these folks. So, I love LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, so check that. We can connect with me on LinkedIn, and then other than that, my website CoryMCarlson.com. I got access. You got access to my podcast there, books, blogs, all that good stuff.
Yep. All be in the show notes, both Win at Home First and Rise and Go. Man, Cory, we can't thank you enough, man. That was fantastic. So many nuggets. Listeners, we do hope you take we hope you take one thing and try that one thing. Just try that one thing for a little bit. So, Cory, we'll have to have you back sometime if you would grace us again with your presence. Super grateful for today. Here at the Daily Leader, guys, we just want to say thank you to all those that listened. If you take a moment, like, subscribe, follow us, go get the Daily Leader tattoo, whatever you need to do. We really appreciate it. And we'll be back again next time.